So get this, we've been pouring all this energy into building smarter and smarter AI. But what happens when the AI gets so advanced that we need other AIs just to check their work? It honestly sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it's really happening, and it is completely flipping the script on how we measure intelligence itself. And that, right there, is the million-dollar question we're tackling. I mean, think about it. If an AI writes a legal brief, or a complex piece of code, or even a poem, how in the world do we know if it's any good? How do you grade that homework fairly and accurately, especially when you need to do it for thousands of AIs at once? Well, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, you could get human experts. And yeah, they're the gold standard for quality, no doubt. But it's painfully slow and costs a fortune. The other option? Have an AI grade another AI. That's lightning fast and you can scale it up forever, but it comes with some pretty serious flaws. The first crack at this was a method called LLM-as-a-Judge. Super simple concept, really. You take the AI's answer, you feed it to another big language model, and you just ask, hey, what score would you give this? It's a one-and-done deal, a single opinion, no follow-up questions. But as it turns out, that simplicity is also its biggest weakness. And that brings us to the core issue. Because when the tasks get even a little bit complicated, these simple AI judges, well, they start to fall apart in some really important ways. The absolute best way to think about it is with this metaphor. The old LLM-as-a-Judge is like a judge who hears 30 seconds of a story and immediately slams down the gavel with a verdict. There's no investigation, no looking at evidence, no cross-examination. It's just a snap judgment based on, well, whatever its programming's gut feeling is. Let's really break down where things go wrong. First, they've got biases baked right in. They just love answers that are super long or answers that kind of sound like something they would have written themselves. Second, and this is a huge one, they can't check anything. They can't use a search engine. They can't use a calculator. This leads to something researchers call hallucinated correctness, which is when an answer looks and sounds totally right, but is just factually wrong. And finally, they just get overwhelmed, Ask them to evaluate multiple things at once, and they just can't do it, spitting out a vague score that isn't helpful to anyone. So to fix all these problems, the research community has come up with a totally new approach. It's time to meet the next generation, the agent as a judge. Now, unlike the old model, the agent judge isn't just one model giving one quick opinion. Nope, it's a whole system. It actually plans out its evaluation, it uses external tools to check facts, and it can even work with other AI agents to get a more balanced, fair perspective. The whole thing is built from the ground up to be tough, verifiable, and really smart. And this diagram just shows the difference so perfectly. On the left, you've got that old, simple, one-step process. But on the right, look at that. The agent judge is dynamic. It's an investigator. It has a plan, it has memory, and it's got a whole toolkit with things like a search engine and a code interpreter. It's a completely different ballgame. So what's actually in this new investigator's toolkit? Let's pop the hood and break down the specific abilities that make the agent judge so much more powerful. I absolutely love how this is structured. You can think of it just like a real legal case. First, you have multi-agent collaboration. That's like bringing in a whole jury of different AIs to debate the topic and cancel out individual biases. Then comes the planning, where the main agent literally writes out an investigation plan. After that, it uses its tools, the evidence kit, to go out and find facts, search the web, run some code. And finally, it uses memory to keep a detailed case file, logging every piece of evidence and every step in its reasoning. Put it all together, and you've turned a simple judgment into a full-blown audit. So at the end of the day, that's the key takeaway. We have moved from a system that gives you a quick, often wrong opinion to a system that conducts a thorough, evidence-based investigation. And that is a massive shift in how we think about evaluating AI. And look, this isn't just a theory locked away in a lab somewhere. These agent judges are already being deployed in some incredibly important, high-stakes fields. Let's see how this actually works out in the real world. The places you can use these agents are just unbelievably broad. For general stuff, they're already checking complex math problems, debugging code, and fact-checking documents. But where it gets really interesting is their move into professional fields like medicine, law, and finance, places where a single mistake can have huge consequences. So take the legal world, for instance. Here, agent judges can actually simulate an entire courtroom debate. They'll spin up a prosecutor agent and a defense attorney agent who then argue a case back and forth. This forces the AI being tested to really defend its logic against tough questions, making the whole evaluation way more solid. Or think about medicine, where this tech is a complete game changer for patient safety. An agent judge can take a diagnosis from an AI doctor and then use its tools to check it against real medical journals and patient data. It makes sure that diagnosis is based on solid, verifiable facts, not just text that sounds like it knows what it's talking about. Now, of course, it's not all smooth sailing. This powerful new approach, as amazing as it is, isn't a silver bullet. There are still some pretty big hurdles to clear before agent judges are everywhere. You've basically got 4 big ones. First, this whole complex investigation. It takes a ton of computing power, so it's expensive. It can also be slow, which isn't great if you need real-time feedback. Then there's safety. Giving an AI agent access to live tools on the internet opens up a whole can of worms for security. And finally, you have privacy. If the agent is storing a case file of its work, especially with sensitive data, that raises some serious red flags. Looking ahead, the research is really focused on a few key things. The biggest piece of the pie is personalization, creating judges that can adapt to what a specific user actually wants. Then there's a big push for generalization, so they can handle totally new tasks they've never seen before. And of course, making them more interactive for human collaboration and optimization to just make them faster and cheaper to run. And all of this leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question. As these agent judges get more and more capable, as they learn to plan, investigate, and even correct themselves, are we just building better report cards for AI? Or are we actually building the very first components for a future where AI systems can reliably evaluate, regulate, and improve themselves with no humans in the loop? Definitely something to chew on.